We walk through them every day, work in them, live in them. But how often do we actually stop and think about the design of the buildings and spaces all around us?
That's true.
You know what I'm talking about? Architecture.
Right.
So get ready to uncover how this approach makes architecture more human-centric,
Yeah.
more functional, and maybe even more beautiful.
Human-centric, that's the key word here.
I think so.
Design thinking at its core, it starts with empathy.
Okay.
It's about putting people at the heart of the design process.
So it's not just architects in their ivory towers drafting blueprints without ever considering the people who will actually be using those spaces?
Definitely not.
Okay, good.
Design thinking, it encourages architects to get out of the studio and into the real world, to observe how people interact with spaces, talk to them about their needs,
Right.
their frustrations, maybe even delve into the cultural context of the site.
Okay, so this sounds like a much more grounded and collaborative approach than the stereotypical image of the lone architect with T-square and a dramatic vision.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And the source actually contrasts design thinking with more traditional problem-solving methods.
Okay.
You know the kind where you have a problem,
Mm-hmm.
you find a solution, and you're done.
Straight line to the finish line.
Exactly.
Oh, boom.
But design thinking is more cyclical.
Okay.
It's like a spiral, constantly circling around the problem, exploring it from different angles.
I like that visual.
Yeah, testing ideas and refining them based on feedback. And it's this iterative nature that helps uncover the best solution.
Oh.
Not just a solution.
Not just a solution, the best solution.
The best solution, yeah.
So our source also mentions a few other key principles like ideation and prototyping.
Right.
I think our listeners might benefit from a quick explanation of those terms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So ideation is essentially brainstorming,
Okay.
a phase where architects let loose, generating a multitude of ideas, no matter how outlandish they may seem.
Okay.
It's about quantity over quality at this stage, exploring all possibilities before narrowing things down.
So no idea is too crazy at this stage.
Yeah. Think of it as sketching out all the potential paths on that spiral we were talking about.
Right. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Well, maybe not that random.
Okay.
But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Then comes prototyping,
Yeah.
where those ideas start to take shape, literally.
Gotcha.
This could involve building physical models, creating detailed drawings, or even using virtual reality to let people walk through a space before it's even built.
Oh, so if I'm picturing those incredible architectural models of futuristic skyscrapers, those are prototypes, right?
They can be, yes.
Okay.
But prototypes can also be much simpler.
Okay.
Even a sketch on a napkin can be a prototype if it helps communicate an idea.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not about the scale. It's about taking these ideas and bringing them to life in a tangible way.
Right.
So you can get feedback.
Exactly.
Make sure you're on the right track.
Precisely.
Okay. But before we dive deeper into these stages, I'm kind of curious about the history of design thinking.
Yeah.
It sounds very modern, but did someone just suddenly invent it?
Interestingly, the roots go back further than you might think.
Okay.
Our source points to the 1960s
Okay.
and a cognitive scientist named Herbert Simon.
Herbert Simon.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that name before.
He wrote a groundbreaking book in 1969 called The Sciences of the Artificial.
Okay.
Now, it wasn't explicitly about design thinking,
Okay.
but Simon laid the groundwork for many of its core principles.
So what was so radical about his ideas back then?
Well, in a time when design was mostly seen as this linear process, Simon argued for a more iterative approach.
Yeah.
He stressed the importance of circling back, refining, even failing as a way to reach truly innovative solutions.
Okay.
This was revolutionary at the time.
So he was basically saying, don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board, embrace the messiness of exploration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And although his ideas didn't become mainstream overnight, they slowly began to take root.
Right.
Then in the 1990s, a company called IDEO
Yes.
really popularized the term design thinking and showed how its principles could be applied to all sorts of problems,
Right.
not just in design.
IDEO, they're like the rock stars of design thinking.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the question remains, how did all of this make its way into the world of architecture?
Yeah, how did architects go from T-squares to embracing this human-centric cyclical approach?
Well, it was a gradual shift. But architects started recognizing that these principles could help them create buildings that weren't just aesthetically pleasing, but also deeply functional
Right.
and responsive to human needs.
Which makes perfect sense, right? After all, a building isn't just a static object. It's a space where people live, work, and interact.
And design thinking helps architects design for those interactions, for the human experience within those spaces.
Okay, now I'm ready to go deeper into those 5 stages that guide the design thinking process.
Okay.
Our source outlines them as empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test.
Right.
So let's start at the beginning. Take us through that first stage. Empathize.
Okay.
What does that look like when applied to architecture?
It's all about immersing yourself in the world of the people you're designing for.
Okay.
In architecture, this might involve observing how people use existing spaces, talking to them about what works and what doesn't, and even researching the cultural context of the site.
So if you're designing a library, you wouldn't just assume everyone wants rows and rows of silent study desks.
Right.
You'd actually go and observe how people use the library.
Yeah.
Talk to them about their preferences.
Precisely. Maybe you discover that people crave more collaborative spaces, or cozy reading nooks,
Yeah.
or even outdoor areas where they can work or relax.
Right.
It's about understanding the reality of how people use the space,
Right.
not relying on your own preconceived notions.
It's like becoming a detective of human behavior.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And these insights gathered during the empathize stage become the foundation for the next step,
Okay.
defining the problem.
So we've gone deep on understanding the people using a space, and now we're defining the problem. But isn't the problem obvious? You need to design a building.
Well, it's more nuanced than that. You see, the defined stage is about framing the design challenge
Okay.
in a way that directly addresses the needs and wants you uncovered during that empathy phase.
Right.
For example, instead of simply design a library, it becomes design a library that fosters a sense of community and provides a variety of study spaces to cater to different learning styles.
So the problem definition becomes laser focused on the specific needs of the people who will be using the space.
Exactly. And in the world of architecture, this definition often involves juggling a whole host of factors beyond just user preferences.
Yeah.
We have to consider sustainability concerns,
Right.
accessibility needs, and how the building integrates with the surrounding urban landscape.
It sounds like architects have to wear a lot of different hats during this stage.
Yeah.
Part sociologist,
Right.
part environmentalist, part urban planner.
It's true. Design thinking encourages architects to think holistically about the impact of their designs, not just on the people using the building, but on the environment and the community as a whole.
Yeah.
And once we have a clear problem definition, that's when the fun really begins.
Okay, let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah, we move on to stage 3.
Ideation. The brainstorming phase where creativity runs wild. So are we talking about architects huddled around a table sketching furiously on giant rolls of paper?
That's certainly one way to do it. Ideation is all about generating a diverse range of ideas,
Okay.
exploring different solutions and playing with materials and forms. And yes, sometimes it involves lots of sketching, model making, and lively discussions.
It makes me think of those rapid-fire design charrettes where architects have a limited time to come up with innovative concepts.
That's a great analogy. During ideation, architects experiment with layouts.
Uh-huh.
Consider the interplay of natural light and think about how the building will interact with its surroundings.
Yeah.
It's a very free-flowing process.
But isn't there a risk of getting lost in all that freedom? How do you know which ideas are worth pursuing?
That's where prototyping comes in, stage 4.
Okay.
Prototyping is about taking those abstract ideas and making them tangible.
Gotcha.
It could involve creating physical models,
Right.
detailed drawings, or even those immersive virtual reality walkthroughs we talked about earlier.
So instead of just imagining how a space might feel, you can actually experience it, even if it's just virtually.
Exactly, and this allows for early testing and feedback, which is crucial in design thinking.
You know, when we were talking about physical models earlier, I had this image of those incredibly intricate miniature skyscrapers, perfect down to the tiny little elevators. Do architects really spend hours crafting those detailed models during the prototyping stage?
Sometimes, yes, especially for large-scale projects.
Okay.
Those detailed models can be invaluable for visualizing complex designs and communicating ideas to clients and stakeholders.
Yeah.
But prototypes don't always have to be so elaborate.
Okay.
Even a simple cardboard model can be a prototype if it helps you test a concept.
So it's not about creating a perfect replica. It's about capturing the essence of the idea and making it testable.
Right, and this brings us to the final stage, testing.
Okay, testing time. What are we testing for in architecture? I imagine it's a bit more complex than seeing if a chair breaks when you sit on it.
It certainly can be. Testing in architecture can encompass a wide range of assessments,
Uh-huh.
depending on the project.
Yeah.
We might be testing the functionality of a space,
Okay.
its accessibility, its energy efficiency, even its aesthetic impact on the surrounding environment.
So this might involve environmental performance assessments, structural integrity tests,
Right.
maybe even focus groups to gauge people's reactions to the design.
You've hit all the key points.
Okay, good.
Testing helps us understand how well the design solves the problem we defined.
Mm-hmm.
It's about gathering data, analyzing feedback, making sure we're on the right track.
I'm sensing a theme here. It's not a straight line from A to B, but a constant cycle of refinement. You prototype, you test, you learn, and you go back and adjust the design. It feels almost like a scientific experiment in some ways.
It is, in a sense.
Yeah.
The iterative nature of design thinking allows for continuous improvement. And that brings us to a crucial point. This cyclical process isn't limited to a single loop.
Okay.
You might go through multiple rounds of prototyping and testing, constantly refining the design.
So even though we've outlined these 5 stages, there's a lot of back and forth, a willingness to jump between stages as needed.
Absolutely. Sometimes during the testing phase, you might uncover new insights that force you to revisit the problem definition,
Uh-huh.
or even go back to the empathy stage to reevaluate your understanding of the user's needs.
It makes me wonder, with all this emphasis on user needs and constant iteration, does design thinking ever clash with the architect's own artistic vision?
It's an interesting question. It's true that design thinking prioritizes the needs of the end user,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean the architect's creativity is stifled. In fact, I'd argue that design thinking actually empowers architects to create even more innovative and impactful designs.
As
By understanding the context, the needs and the constraints of a project, architects can then channel their creativity in a more focused and meaningful way. It's like having a well-defined canvas on which to paint your masterpiece.
Okay, I can see that, but design thinking goes beyond just individual buildings, right? I mean, architecture plays a huge role in shaping entire cities and communities. So how does this approach impact the way we think about urban spaces?
You've touched upon another crucial aspect of design thinking.
Okay.
It's not just about creating beautiful buildings in isolation. It's about designing for a larger context for the well-being of entire communities.
So we're talking about designing cities that are not only functional, but also livable,
Right.
sustainable, and equitable.
Exactly. Design thinking encourages architects and urban planners to tackle those complex challenges facing cities today, from overpopulation and aging infrastructure
Right.
to the need for more green spaces and affordable housing.
It sounds like we're shifting from a mindset of building first, people later, to a more human-centric approach that prioritizes the needs of the people who inhabit those spaces.
That's the essence of it, and our source provides some compelling examples of how design thinking is already being used to create more human-centered and impactful architecture around the world.
Oh, I always love a good real-world example. Which one stood out to you? I'm ready to be inspired. What examples of design thinking in action really showcase its potential?
One that immediately comes to mind is Maggie Centers.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them?
The name rings a bell, but refresh my memory.
They're a network of centers offering practical and emotional support for people living with cancer.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that the buildings themselves are designed using design thinking principles to create truly healing environments.
So it's not just about medical care, it's about how the space itself can contribute to a sense of well-being during a difficult time.
Exactly. The architects behind Maggie Centers, they really immersed themselves in the world of cancer patients. They observed, they listened, and they translated those insights into spaces that offer comfort,
Yeah.
solace, and even a sense of community.
That's incredible. What other example comes to mind?
Well, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the High Line in New York City.
Okay.
You've probably heard of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's that elevated park built on old railway tracks, right?
Yeah.
I've seen pictures and it looks amazing.
It's a stunning example of urban revitalization driven by design thinking.
Okay.
What's so remarkable is that the design process was deeply rooted in community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
They held public workshops, gathered feedback from residents, and considered the historical and ecological context of the site.
So they didn't just impose a preconceived design on the community, they actively involved the people who would be using the space.
Precisely. And the result is this vibrant urban oasis that has transformed a derelict industrial space into a beloved public park, fostering social connection and a renewed sense of community.
Okay, the High Line is officially on my must-visit list. I need to experience this design thinking marvel firsthand.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect illustration of how this approach can revitalize not just buildings, but entire neighborhoods and communities.
As we've been talking, it strikes me that design thinking isn't just relevant for architects or urban planners. It's a mindset, a problem-solving approach that we can all apply in our own lives.
I completely agree. Whether you're designing a website, planning an event, or even just rearranging your living room, the principles of design thinking can help you create more human-centered and effective solutions.
It's about being empathetic, iterative, and always willing to test and refine your ideas.
Exactly. And on that note, before we wrap up this, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question.
I always love your thought-provoking questions. What is it this time?
Take a look around the spaces you inhabit every day. What spaces have been designed with you in mind? And what spaces could benefit from a design thinking approach? Which spaces leave you feeling inspired, energized, and connected? And which ones leave you feeling, well, less than thrilled?
That's a great question. It makes me want to go home and reevaluate my own living space through a design thinking lens, see if I can make it even more functional and enjoyable.
And that's the beauty of it. Once you start seeing the world through a design thinking lens, you begin to notice all sorts of possibilities for improvement.
It's like unlocking a new level of awareness about the built environment and how it impacts our lives.
And who knows, maybe some of our listeners will even be inspired to incorporate design thinking into their own creative endeavors, big or small.
I hope so. Well, on that inspiring note, it's time to wrap up this.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
And a huge thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of how design thinking shapes the spaces we inhabit and the power it holds to create a more human-centered world.
Until next time, Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep designing.
And we'll see you